Dear colleagues, Ministry of Defense spokesperson Mr. Vilyen Pidgornyy will speak on Russia's military aggression in eastern Ukraine. Mr. Pidgornyy, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me give you a weekly update on the events of Russia-Ukraine military conflict in eastern Ukraine that took place between May 1st and 7th. The number of ceasefire violations committed by Russian-backed militants last week increased by approximately 15% in comparison to the previous week. The lowest number of militants' attacks was registered on May 6th. There were 45 incidents of fire, including 15 episodes of heavy weapons use. The largest number of enemy ceasefire violations occurred yesterday, May 7th. There were 65 ceasefire violations, 35 of which included mortar and artillery fire. Luhansk sector. The situation in the sector was rather intense throughout the whole week, but on Sunday it deteriorated even further. Russia-backed militants continued to open mortar fire of low and medium intensity at positions of Ukrainian armed forces. The enemy remains consistent while choosing their target areas. Stanitsa Luhanska, Krymske, and the area of Popasna regularly came under enemy fire both during the day and at night time. On May 1st, Russia-backed militants launched a short attack at Krymske, having discharged about 20 rounds. On May 2nd, pro-Russian proxies initiated more than 10 mortar attacks at Ukrainian positions, predominantly in Krymske, Novozvanivka, and Troitske. On May 4th, Russia-equipped militants used artillery against the positions of Ukrainian armed forces in Novozvanivka. On Sunday, pro-Russian proxies abruptly increased the intensity of their artillery fire, which translated into 18 episodes of heavy weapons use. The enemy artillery units discharged nearly 270 rounds of various calibers at positions of Ukrainian armed forces in the sector, exceeding the total number of rounds discharged over the previous 6 days. The Russian proxies opened fire with 122 as well as 152 mm artillery and mortars against Krymske. Other hot spots included the area of Popasna and Troitske. Last week, the daily number of ceasefire violations ranged between 6 and 20. Now, Donetsk sector. The tensest situation was observed on May 2nd, when pro-Russian proxies launched a 4-hour mortar attack against Avdiivka from 2 directions, having discharged more than 80 rounds. That day, Russian-backed militants also opened mortar fire at Troitske, Luhanske, and Zaitsevo. The amount of mortar rounds discharged during the day amounted to 180. On May 5th, enemy initiated a 2-hour complex fire against Pidgornyy, using mortars and various calibers, infantry fighting vehicles, grenade launchers, as well as small arms. On May 6th, pro-Russian proxies used mortars and tanks against Avdiivka. That same day, enemy sniper groups advanced to the front line in Donetsk airport area. Last week, the enemy fire activity ranged between 14 and 17 ceasefire violations. Mariupol sector. Enemy traditionally engaged Ukrainian armed forces in Marinka district and as well as at the southern coastal defense lines. On May 3rd, militants opened artillery fire at Vilyen. That day, enemy sniper groups fired at Novotroitske, Pavlopil, and Novomykhailivka. On May 4th, militants opened complex fire against Pavlopil. Last week, the daily number of ceasefire violations ranged between 17 and 34 in the Mariupol sector. Over the week, Ukrainian troops registered 17 episodes of hostile drones conducting aerial reconnaissance in the Ato area, which is 5 episodes more than the previous week. The majority of enemy scouting flights were registered in the Donetsk sector. Ukrainian military intelligence reports about new supplies of weapons and ammunition coming from Russia to its proxies in eastern Ukraine. 24 railway tanks with fuel, 10 railway cars carrying trucks loaded with ammunition arrived from Russia in the occupied territories in eastern Ukraine over the previous week. According to the Ukrainian military intelligence, the number of confirmed casualties amongst Russian proxies of the week is 13 killed and 35 wounded. The majority of enemy casualties were recorded in the Mariupol sector. Last week, 4 Ukrainian servicemen were killed in action and 40 servicemen were wounded in action. Ukrainian armed forces incurred all the losses as a result of enemy indirect fire. On May 6th, members of the Ukrainian humanitarian non-governmental project Evacuation 200 received bodies of 3 Ukrainian servicemen from the representatives of the enemy. These 3 Ukrainian servicemen heroically died on May 1st in the enemy fire near Svetlodarsk. Our hearts go out to the families and friends of the fallen Ukrainian heroes. According to local authorities' reports in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, a few civilians were injured as a result of enemy fire last week as well. That'll be all for today. Thank you for your attention.